Welcome to the High Value Sales Show of Eversprint.com. I'm Malcolm Louie, the managing member of Eversprint, and today we're speaking with Josh Fulton, the founder and managing partner of eSquared Communication Consulting, a provider of high-end business telecommunications services. Welcome to the show, Josh.
Thanks, Well. Thank you, Malcolm.
Josh, you grew your company's revenue from $7.2 million in 2014 to $20.6 million in 2017, a 185% increase. Before we talk about how you grew your company so fast, can you briefly share what your company does beyond my quick intro and how your company differs from the competition?
You bet. Thanks, Malcolm, for asking. We are a full lifecycle technology firm that focuses on mobile technology. So what that means is if you're in the transportation business or a construction business or healthcare business or even in retail services, we handle anything inside your space that is mostly mobile focused. So that could be in the construction space, it could be devices from cell phones to Wi-Fi to tablets to laptops, anything in between. We're handling that device plus the applications that go on the device.
And how do you differ from your competitors who might be doing the same thing?
The biggest thing we differentiation with is the fact that we have a very seasoned staff. Our people have an average tenureship around 5 to 6 years in the industry. The average probably around the industry is probably around 1 to 2 years. So you get a very seasoned person working on with alongside you. We have tons of experience. We've been doing this over almost 18, 19 years now. And the experience pays off. You generally, in the industry, are working through mobile carriers, cell phone carriers from Verizon, AT&T, to Sprint and T-Mobile in the States. They typically have a very vast knowledge, a very large product portfolio. We are very focused on a very select few vertical markets, the construction, healthcare, retail space, and the applications that go inside that. So we have expertise inside those verticals that set us apart from everybody else.
And in terms of where you are in the wireless spectrum of things, now you're just doing stuff that's related to communications among people, or are you also going down to the Internet of Things and taking care of those sort of communications as well?
No, that's a great question. We do both. So when you start talking about retail or in the construction space or healthcare, you've got major components where you may have a tablet that has peripheral products, IoT type products that are either connecting back to that tablet or device with sensors, various remote types of devices that are going to handle IoT type data, collecting it back through that centralized process. But yeah, it's a little of both nowadays. Enterprise IoT is definitely a hot button of space, of innovation, automation that you're seeing more and more of.
Right. Now, how far do you go on the Internet of Things? Are you involved with creating assets, devices that communicate with your clients' systems and databases, or that's more along the lines of they have this already and they need your help with connecting it?
We're more of an integrator, so we help and consult along the way in some cases where a client will bring us in to help figure out how to support the ecosystem or support the life cycle management of it, or take the data, integrate it between systems. So we're more of an integrator of sorts that help out with the life cycle management of these components.
Right. And what do you mean by life cycle management?
What that means is in the area of, if you can imagine a construction company or a transportation company, they have to buy a tablet, a mount, data services. They have to buy peripheral barcode scanners, sometimes tough books from Panasonic, various other peripheral products to make the work that they're needing to do with an application work. We handle the procurement, the setup, the deployment, then the reverse of that. So if someone's saying we're done with these devices, we will actually take them and recycle them. But anything in between, from start to finish, we'll handle all support. We have a 24/7 help desk that's a NOC that manages these devices to make sure they're operating at full capacity at all times.
Right. Okay. So pretty much everything in between, right, from beginning to disposal and whatever needs might be needed in between those 2 points.
Oftentimes they find that they order and procure anywhere from between 4 to 10 different types of services to make an application work. For example, in the transportation space, they may be buying a telematic service provider, but they also need a payroll service. They may need a training tool. They may need an inspection tool. They may need some other applications that handles transactions. And what happens is in that space, they end up trying to either self-support or put a driver through going through multiple locations to get support. We make that simple for them. They call one place. It's designed for and focused in their industry. And so it makes that process from the end user much more respectable and easier to get to control, to give a high level service.
Right. So I think within the verticals you focus on, most businesses use the same applications.
It's pretty wide. I would say that it's not just always the same. A lot of times now they're buying one or two off-the-shelf type applications, trying to integrate it into a custom application. The mid-market enterprise space have typically built or are building their own mobile applications to either replicate true ERP systems inside their four walls. And when they get into that space, they realize there are components that they don't have in their help desk or in other kind of specialty IT departments. That's where we kind of fill in those gaps.
Okay. So but not too much. I mean, if you had to estimate how much is like brand new custom work where your team has to come up to speed on a new technology as opposed to as opposed to integrating technologies that you're familiar with, what would that ratio be?
Yeah, it's definitely the minority. I would say it's probably like a 75-25 split. 75% of the time we're using conventional applications that have tried and true experiences that we're integrating and deploying. But there's probably about a 25% chance where they've either built their own application or customizing the application. And in those scenarios where they're not standard, that's probably where sometimes we shine the most.
And you're able to shine the most in what way? How so?
Typically, it's the challenge of trying to do something custom, either in setup or deployment or custom in the hardware or even in the application layer. You find that it's very difficult for either an internal help desk team to do it or a specialized application support company. We have specialized in being very custom in the area of how we handle support. We are very specific in how we actually engage and how we support and train our internal people. So I think it's that customization that kind of sets us apart in that area, which also adds to the fact that it's very complicated for them to try to do it on their own.
Right. Yeah, definitely. I can see that. A lot of moving parts, as you said. Now, your company grew pretty fast, 7.2 million in 2014, and you almost tripled it in 3 years to 20.6 million. What were the three biggest drivers behind that growth?
Well, I think it's some of the things you mentioned earlier. You have adoption of mobility as a whole. It was transitioning from legacy laptops and desktop devices. Mobility for enterprise has been an uptake for 10, 15 years now. It's become more and more standard, and with the innovation of the type of processors that are in these devices now, it's replacing more and more laptops. So I think it's the combination of being in the right spot at the right time, applications being actually enterprise ready now, that you're seeing more and more applications being pushed to the field via handsets or tablets, or that used to be you couldn't do it because there was too much processing power needed, and nowadays it's more available. Costs have come down, so that these applications that used to be very, very expensive to deploy now become more and more standard. And in more cases than not, the construction, transportation, healthcare audiences are trying to stay up with this technology that's a constant changing element. So I think it's the combinations of those things that have kind of driven the marketplace for us.
Okay, so with the transition to mobility, do you consider that, and all the things you just described to me, do you consider that just one driver and there are two other drivers behind your growth? Or were there three things within what you just described to me being the primary drivers?
Yeah, I think that the technology as a whole has definitely helped us. I think that we have came into an area where we filled a niche for initial customers, 18 years ago, where we were filling a void that wasn't being provided by the larger enterprise space that's servicing this area. So some of the competitors we compete against are IBM and Accenture, AT&T and Verizon, and they have large entities that handle very large moving parts. But if you ask for a boutique approach from any of those folks, it's very difficult or very expensive to do. And it takes a long time to implement. I think some of the implementations that we've seen sometimes for years, we've done them in weeks or if not months. So I think it's the speed, the nimbleness of us, and the kind of overarching element of complexities that kind of come together to make us a thriving business.
Okay, so if I were to say, to delineate the three drivers, the first one, you benefit from the transition to mobility, right, both on a hardware and software side of things. Second one is that you're able to provide a boutique experience, unlike the larger firms, which certainly can do it, but they would take longer to do, and they would, I would imagine, cost orders of magnitude more than for you to do it. Do I get that right for drivers 1 and 2?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, is there a third driver that sticks in your mind?
Yeah, I would say that the mobile operating networks became faster over the last 5-6 years, where it's enabled connectivity to be more on the line of a hardline connection. So when you move from 4G to LTE to now what's about to come out in 5G technology, I think you're getting a similar experience on a mobile architecture that allows for flexibility. I think that's also driven a lot of the changes as well.
Right. Now, you didn't say this explicitly, but I imagine it's related. In regards to the cloud, how is that helping your business? Like, are the software apps now just on the cloud and you're just using the hardline-like nature of the mobile networks to access the applications? Is that how it works, or are the applications on the device themselves?
Most of the time in mid-market enterprise, we see kind of a hybrid approach. I don't see all or nothing. It's half the architecture is in a cloud environment, half of it's on an on-premise or a cloud infrastructure built out for a enterprise organization. We use almost a mix ourselves. Most of our devices that are managed by what's called an MDM tool, all are in a cloud architecture. All of our data center is a kind of a mixed use of both cloud and premise-based applications. So I think cloud has been an element. I think consumers have been the driver for most of the cloud early adoption. Businesses have kind of lagged behind on the cloud architecture. I think for the most part, you still see a mix of both cloud, premise-based, and kind of a hybrid approach. So I don't know if it's entirely the driver that's made the difference for us, but I think it's definitely made it easier to scale applications out in the marketplace.
Right. So why haven't enterprises jumped on the cloud architecture? It seems like, conceptually, it seems like it makes life easier for them, right? If you need to update, the 10,000 devices that are out there, you could do it at one go on the cloud as opposed to updating each device individually.
Sometimes they can actually achieve the same thing with a higher level of security. There's always been a security issue between some of the concerns that whether they actually control their data or not. I think it's a combination of legacy systems and the cost to convert them. It's probably one of the biggest drivers that takes probably a lengthier time to see cloud emerging in that area. Where you have a standalone application, give it like a PBX phone system that you can move into the cloud fairly easily. Or if you have an MDM controller device that's in the cloud, I think those are easy to move if they're standalone. If they are integrated, I think there's some complexities and some data controls that you worry about.
Right. So you've done a wide array of projects over the past 18 years or so that you've been around. What's been the most interesting project that you've worked on that you can share details about?
Well, one of the most interesting ones has been when we've built scratch applications. Some of those have come and gone. Some of them didn't have a long lifespan, but just seeing the early adoption, building out an application for either a transportation, construction, or healthcare type of client, it's exciting. Filling a void in that marketplace is a fun experience, I think, the most. As far as a business that we definitely tout that we've used and probably have had the best experience with integrating, Cisco Foods was our client that we've probably had the most experience with in the transportation space. That gave us a broad spectrum of different aspects of services that I probably would say I'm the most proud of.
Can you give some details as to what you did for them?
Cisco Foods is one of the largest food delivery companies in the United States. They operate over 10,000 trucks, public information. They had converted their infrastructure over some legacy telematic systems over a period of time, about a year and a half. we were the lead integrator and taking their old system and pushing into the new system. It gave us great pride in being able to do that and be able to do it on time, on budget. So it's an exciting project to tout for sure.
Very cool. And were you helping them define the project at the very beginning, or did they already have the project defined and they brought you in to get it done?
We were definitely in the early phases of planning. There was a consulting group that helped bring us in to help implement some of the projects. So we were definitely at the table. I wouldn't say I'd take credit for actually helping implementation of that perspective for them, but we definitely were a part of the early stages of planning for sure.
Right. And I imagine that sort of project has huge impact to Cisco, right, in terms of having more data available more quickly for where all the 10,000 trucks may be.
It's made a massive improvement from a customer experience to trying to keep them inside a compliance area for electronic log devices, and all the way down to handling their barcode scanners when they actually offload products to the truck. So it's a pretty broad transportation application for them, and it's made a huge impact in their operations, and it made a huge impact for their end customers.
Right. Yeah, I can imagine that. And that sounds like a pretty complex project, right? If you're going all the way from the end customers to even just managing and tracking where the assets may be at a corporate level.
For sure.
How many years was that project?
We are still under contract with them. It was a 5-year project. We have about two and a half years probably left of that project.
Mm-hmm. So now you've already finished implementing, and now you're more of the maintenance, monitoring, optimizing phase?
Yeah, I would say we're definitely past the point of implementation. We are now in the what we call the life cycle management of it, which really is now going back through and continuing to maintain the devices, maintain the hardware and the applications, and improve it as we can along the way. So now we're in the phase of maintaining it.
All right. Now, is Cisco your typical client in terms of size? I know you mentioned you work with medium and large enterprises.
We, as a whole, focus on the mid-market to enterprise space. That's where most of our clients are.
Okay.
We have a variety in that space, but we do have very small customers, some of what we consider S&B customers. But we definitely have a very large base of mid-market to enterprise customers because of the fact that I think our value statement ends up definitely leveraged with scale. If you are going into an application to deploy it with larger and larger scale, it definitely has more value in that space.
Right. So how do you go about winning a contract the likes of Cisco? What's your sales and marketing process?
In that process, or in any of those kind of larger engagements, it is that we have a direct sales team, and we engage directly to those type of customers on a regular basis. We also go to market with our partners of software companies. We are integrated oftentimes with our software partners. So if you think of retail partners in the POS systems, we are integrated inside a retail POS software deployment, our pitch. And so we are integrated into that process. So we are their mobile lifecycle management architecture kind of engineer expert in the background. So we're going to market with a combination effort.
Okay. What percentage of your revenue comes from your direct sales as opposed to, or rather, what percentage of your new business comes from your direct sales team versus your software partners who bring you in?
As a whole, it's probably a split, pretty close to even. We have a growing list of partners in the software space that is probably growing faster than our direct sales team, but as of right now, it's about even.
Right. Now, do you have hardware partners as well?
We do. So some of our hardware partners are brand names you recognize, like Samsung, and a lot of the carriers are partners as well. So you think of like AT&T and Verizon are partners of ours. We have software partners in the space that manage the devices, like from VM, from AirWatch to SODI, or 42 Gears for Assured MDM. So you have a variety of software partner and brand names you definitely recognize.
Right. I imagine there are probably some service partners as well that where they bring you in because you guys are doing totally different areas of work, but their client needs some lifecycle management of their technology, right? They'll bring you in as well.
For sure. Yeah. We find that there are companies out there that have either trying to find support either as an enterprise themselves or trying to get rid of handling the day-to-day operations of an application, or through managing a device. They're trying to get out of that game, and they look for us from that perspective. That's a direct type of engagement. The indirect engagement is typically making a deployment of an application easier and it's more simplified. So that's where we kind of see both those elements kind of working well.
Right. Looking ahead a little bit for 2019, what can you share with us in regards to what growth targets you might have from a revenue perspective, what challenges your team needs to overcome to hit those targets, anything that you want to, any strengths you want to leverage, and so on?
As a whole, we've grown between 15 to upwards of 20% year-over-year growth consistently for almost 18 years. This year feels just like the rest. I feel like it's going to be on that same kind of level. I feel like it's going to be a great year in the area of some of these emerging new software company partnerships. We have a couple of startups that are in the process of starting up right now in a variety of new kind of entertainment vertical markets. We're very excited about. There's a product that we see. It's called Surf. It is a tablet in the back of a Uber and type of car where they're providing specialized content onto that device, which we're very excited about to see they kind of explode. So some of the startups I think are very excited about. I think the marketplace as a whole is still very stable. I feel like that the enterprise mid-market spaces, the verticals we focus on, are still in investment mode and trying to find growth. At the same time, trying to lean out their operations and make a better experience for the end customer. So, which aligns very well for our business.
Right. How does a direct sales team go about finding new business for you?
I would say they use a variety of tools. Is networking. It's still some of the old-fashioned ways that really matter the most. Our ability to connect with people face-to-face is still very, very important to our business. They use a variety of ways to do that. They use trade shows, they use meetings, they use networking events, they use the ability to get in contact through LinkedIn. I'd say it's a variety of ways. I'd like to say that some of the newer ways through social media has enhanced it. It definitely has not replaced good old-fashioned face-to-face meetings, though.
Right. Now, how do they go about getting those face-to-face meetings? Are they cold calling, smiling and dialing? We say you're doing an inbound marketing type campaign and getting people to express interest, and then they follow up. How do they get that meeting for you?
It's not as easy as it used to be. You'll find that they are using a variety of newer ways to do that. So, combination of drip campaigns through email marketing to trying to find ways of connecting through trade shows and getting an introduction through a variety of partners, to finding ways of getting referrals into other relationships. It's not as easy. I think smiling and dialing is not something that is scalable like it was 10 years ago. It has to be something that you've evolved to a newer technology to make it work where it's actually more effective.
I took a look at your online presence from a pay-per-click perspective and an SEO perspective, and not seeing much presence at all. Almost, according to my tools, almost zero presence in both dimensions. What's your take on that from a business perspective?
We've not really found that to be something that drives our business. We're such a niche element. We can't really find a good SEO approach that is pulled in the right audience without overspending to gain that audience. So as a whole, that's been one of the challenges. When you get into a niche market, identifying those is much more complicated, in my opinion. So I think that we see that our online or our social media feeds, or even spending money in the social media platforms, have really not paid off as far as our perspective. That's why I say that it really pays to be in the networking space, to be able to kind of layer it on with some of these things, even like doing this right here, this podcast or an audio, or layering on the social element of kind of creating a brand awareness that we think that actually works. but we don't see, because we are a B2B play, we don't see a lot of the old traditional ways working. So we're trying to reinvent that. I think a lot of the market is too.
Right. Have you tried pay-per-click campaigns at all?
We have. I mean, of course, over 18 years, you tried everything. But as of recently, we have not tried anything in the pay-per-click. We have tried various social media, try to find, for example, inside LinkedIn, we know the right contacts that generally are buying from us, but trying to find the right combination of advertising inside that space to be able to drive traffic has been difficult.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes a lot of experimentation, right? Marketing is essentially a huge laboratory experiment, and you just, what's the old adage? 50% of the marketing works. The problem is you don't know which side is the side that works until you do it.
Yeah, that's right. We find it's difficult because, if you read, there's a couple of folks that I think that are actually quite interesting online. There's a company called Scaled, which is a newer business that you can find on LinkedIn. Or one of the founder and the CEO does a lot of video posts. Does a lot of blogging, which creates an online kind of brand awareness. I think that type of PR layering, I think that could work for a B2B kind of marketing perspective. I don't think that there is really one formula that kind of gets the audience, because there's so much of online research going on before you get inside that selling cycle that you need to be ahead of that curve, because by the time we get a hold of them, they've done a ton of research. They're very knowledgeable. So we need to be early in that phase. And the best way we think we can do it is through social media, kind of layering through PR campaigns that really make a difference out there.
Yeah. But like you said, right, the challenge is finding the right audience, because imagine with social media, and because of the space you're in, you will attract a lot of people to check out what you're doing who really aren't your ideal customer, your ideal clients.
And most social media was designed for consumers in mind. Twitter, Facebook specifically, I think those are made for consumers. I think that the more niche, LinkedIn has more of a business audience for sure. I think that if you can layer that into traditional media PR campaigns where you do through the Business Journal, through Wall Street Journal, or through various vertical kind of media outlets, I think that makes a difference. I think that starts adding vertical expertise. I think if you tried to do broad, it is a large sense of a waste of time and waste of money.
Yeah. So what exciting trends do you see? You mentioned kind of a little bit about tablets in the back of Ubers. Technology is constantly making hardware and software less expensive from a mobile wireless perspective. What trends are you seeing unfolding ahead of you that you can take advantage of?
I think we're seeing the kind of beginning of the end of a laptop is what I think we're seeing. You're seeing more and more people in the business world converting away from a laptop to a tablet style device. I think that is going to continue to happen. I think eventually the tablet market owns the overarching laptop market, and you're going to find more and more of the handheld devices now can compute at a speed that a desktop can. So you're going to see some of that hybrid elements where, for example, Samsung has several different products where you actually can dock your handheld device and replace your desktop experience with a broad, big screen with basically using your tablet or your laptop or your cell phone as a replacement. So I think you're going to see that continue. Enterprises are trying to use IoT to add automation to their processes. If it's a cold chain delivery transportation system trying to monitor temperature through their trailers, or if it's an asset tracking environment where they're trying to make sure they can locate different devices, that expense, the type of IoT in enterprise is making that more and more affordable. Healthcare is doing a very similar thing. So I think you're seeing emergence of remote patient monitoring that is an emerging market space that is probably the next few years you're going to see more and more of it, where you're going to see a tablet and peripheral products that really attach to themselves to make it easier to monitor patients to lower costs of healthcare. So I think those are some emerging markets we see between IoT and mobility. I think you're going to see a large percentage of what we think that's going to be emerging and replacing traditional systems.
Any particular trends that might be adverse for your business that you're keeping an eye on?
Yeah, trade wars are not good for technology as a whole. So we're always kind of slightly concerned about that. Because so much of the product is made and manufactured overseas, so that is a concern. Economics make a difference, right? If we have a strong economics, people invest in technology. It can be flipped though. When you do have a downside economy, people do invest to optimize the business, to mature it. So I think as a whole, the concerns around labor shortages, trade wars, the areas of some of the advent of automation are some concerns. When I say automation, we like to say we use technology to complement a human experience. We don't want an automation to drive out the human condition. So we are trying to make sure we're always making that relevant in those spaces. I think there's a lot of people that are trying to use technology to replace people. We think of it as a complement to it. So I think some of those are some of the challenges in the overall marketplace today that I think are definitely everybody's trying to deal with, figure it out going forward.
Right. In regards to the challenges for your company to continue to grow 15 to 20% every year, is there one particular challenge that your team needs to consistently overcome?
It's traditional things. We're a small business. We've got 145 employees. We're not AT&T. We're not Accenture. We're not IBM. So it's the size of the business competing with very large businesses out there with very deep pockets. So for us to be able to continue to find ways of growth, we've got to innovate faster. We've got to be better than the large competitors in the marketplace. So traditionally, we've done that for 18 years. I don't see a reason why we won't be able to continue to do that. I think that we, as a whole, think that the market is trying to innovate around technology to give a good sweet spot between the two is what a lot of what our customers are wanting nowadays. So I think that's probably the biggest thing.
Right. When you say innovating around top technology and the sweet spot, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think that if you look at the 4 verticals I mentioned, from a retail experience or a restaurant, or if you think of a healthcare provider in a home or construction or transportation, any of those folks that call in to get our support are very interested in providing a white glove, high touch experience. So we're not automating that experience out. So it's not something that you go through if you call into a large corporation like American Express or call into AT&T, where you go through 15 different levels of automation before you get a hold of a person. They want to know that you're going to get a hold of a person in our environment. So and it's domestic support is what's one of the things you're seeing more and more for security reasons other than that. So I think that the sweet spot, when I say that, is trying not to automate that human interaction so that they can get to the right person and we can fix the problem fast versus trying to completely automate it with a self-help approach, which is what a lot of people are doing. If you look at what Google does from a Nest perspective, they're trying to figure out how to support their Nest products by using a bunch of self-help tools. At the same time, at the end of the road, they eventually will allow you to get to a person, but they really force you through a self-help approach. What our customers want is definitely giving that driver that's in a truck that's trying to figure out a problem with their technology, the ability to get hold of an actual live human being is still very important to them.
Oh yeah, just solving the problem quickly pays dividends as opposed to spending 5 minutes going through some menu and getting stuck in a path and not being able to go backwards. That's incredibly frustrating.
It's incredibly frustrating, and in the end, you're not always giving the right level of support to solve it. So some of the problems that we deal with, because they are more customized, you can't really put an automation in place right now that makes that too easy. You can have AI that helps out with getting the problem to the right kind of source to be able to make that faster. You can use automations to identify problems before they happen, which is what we do. So as a whole, you can use those type of technologies to make it easier and faster. But really, at the end of the day, you got to be able to solve that problem, and you got to give still a human touch to it.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that would give you the edge as well, right? When other people are going the automation route and then you provide this high touch, high glove service, your customers or clients, they're going to have an edge over their competitors. whether it be for in-house or external use?
Yeah, I think it's the complement. If you complement it, right? So when a call comes into our support center today, we know a lot about that person calling in. We know they've called in before. We know what kind of problems they've had in the past. We know if they're calling in a certain period of time, is it related to the previous problem? We know what type of device that they have, what application they have, and we have the ability to remote into the device instantly. So that type of complementing of AI, remote tool, mobile application, all those things come together to make that experience where in the end, the person on the other end of the phone is able to get back to doing their job faster. That's our goal.
Right. And then everyone's happy when they can do that, for sure.
For sure.
3 last questions for you. Say you were to have a billboard. Maybe you want to have your billboard set up in front of one of your biggest enterprise businesses that you want to do business with. What would be the message that you would have on that billboard for them to see?
That's a good question. Probably the type of client we want typically is in the area of those vertical markets I've mentioned several times. I would say that it would something along the lines, we make your technology simple to manage. Something along the lines that makes it easy for them to understand that if you allow us the opportunity to manage your technology, we'll do it easier and faster and cheaper than you're doing it today. So in some kind of messaging orientation, that's what I would try to say on a billboard.
Right. Easier, faster tech management. Easier, faster, cheaper tech management. When you're saying that, it almost reminded me of the $6 Million Man, if you remember that show.
Absolutely. That was a good show.
Yeah, it was an awesome show. Steve Austin, he's the man. Faster, stronger, better, right?
Right.
And 2 last questions, and I know you've mentioned it throughout our call, but maybe you can summarize it again. Who are your ideal clients, and what's the best way for them to reach your team?
Our ideal clients are in the mid-market size to enterprise size, in the vertical markets of construction, healthcare, retail, that is in transportation space. Those type of clients that have 2 to maybe 10 different types of technology that they're outfitting for their individual employee, which have some complexity around mobile applications, desktop integration, and a lot of moving parts to pull it all together. That's kind of our ideal client. If you're in the retail space and you're trying to now reinvent your retail experience, so you're putting tablets in that environment, or if you're in a restaurant and you're now removing either waiters and waitresses and you're putting tablets on the desktop of that to be able to place orders, and you're trying to figure out the technology of that, we are looking for those type of clients where they have mobile and they're trying complexities of trying to manage that ecosystem to make it simplified so they can actually go back to doing what their core business is.
All right. And when you say mid-market, how do you define that? Is it by revenue, by number of employees, number of locations?
It's typically employees and revenue, the combination. So I would say typically it's 2,000 employees and above is kind of our mid-market line for us. It is definitely widely different from place to place where you define it, but we look at 2,000 employees and above is typically what we're shooting for. Over $1 billion in revenue is typically our kind of client profile.
Right. So for these companies of this size, does it take a long time from initial contact to building a relationship and actually winning a deal with them?
Sales cycles are definitely long. They average right around a year as a whole. So definitely sales cycles are long, and it definitely takes a while to identify them and find them and recruit them as a customer.
Right. All right. Josh, it's been awesome having you on my show today. I really enjoyed hearing how you grew your company so fast.
Malcolm, thank you for having me.
We've been speaking with Josh Fulton, the founder and managing partner of eSquared Communication Consulting, about his company's rapid growth. For interviews with other fast-growing, high-value sales companies, or to learn how we can accelerate your firm's high-value sales through automation, visit eversprint.com.